إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. I have completed 1 month serving here as Assistant Imam at ISPCC. And I am eternally grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing me this opportunity to serve you all and for also allowing me to serve at such a diverse community. If you look throughout our community, we have people from every corner of the earth. But while concluding my studies at seminary, something that constantly would come to mind is, what does community really mean? What does it mean to us as being community? And then something that always disseminated and came to me that transcended everything else was that we always were just ummah and that we were from the best of people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكَ أُمَّةً وُسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ, and we have made you ummatan wusata. We have made you a middle people. But this word wusata, middle, in the Arabic language, can mean many different things. It can mean the best of people. It can mean a just people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's telling us that we not only follow the middle path, but we are the best people. And He mentions this verse directly after affirming His rububiyyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, وَقُلِ اللَّهِ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ إِلَى الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that He owns وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. To everything, and the east and the west is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is in control. He is the owner of everything in the east and the west. يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ إِلَى الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. He guides whom He wills to the straight path. So after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirmed for us that He is the owner of everything, His rububiyyah, His lordship, He told us that He made us ummatan wusata. He made us the middle people, a just people. So it is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and only from Him alone that we are ummatul wusata, that we are a just and excellent people. But going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the metric that we have for determining how excellent and how just we are. In the verse that we always hear every single week in Jum'ah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَىٰ وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ تَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِندَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. Every single week we hear this verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ, O people. Now in this verse, He's not talking to just Muslims. He's talking to all of mankind. We have created you مِن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَىٰ. We have created you from both man and woman. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ تَعَارَفُوا. And we have created you, or we have made you, better translated, شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ تَعَارَفُوا. We have made you many different peoples and tribes for the sole purpose, لِتَعَارَفُوا, to getting to know one another. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. Indeed, the most noble, the best person in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has the most taqwa, the most God consciousness, the most God awareness. So it is not our shu'ub, our peoples. It is not our qaba'il, it is not our tribes that distinguishes us in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it is our taqwa that makes us righteous and makes us high in society. And this is something that Sheikh Yasser, he mentioned beautifully 2 weeks ago in the khutbah, speaking about the diversity of our communities and speaking about how this is something that we have to come to terms with here in America as Muslims. But as Muslims, we have the best example in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best example in the fact that we have two examples of how he was a leader and an imam in his community, both in Mecca and in Medina. So while they were in Mecca, it was not a Muslim country. It was not a predominantly Islamic society. The Muslims, while they were in Mecca, were the underdogs. The Muslims, while they were in Mecca, they were the ones who were not of a high social standing. So it comes in one story or one narration that the Prophet ﷺ, he was with Bilal, he was with Suhaib al-Rumi, he was with Ammar ibn Yasir, and other companions that were a low social status. When the noblemen, the politicians, the financiers of Quraysh came by. So let's stop right here for a second. The Prophet ﷺ, the best man to ever walk the face of the earth, from a very prestigious and high lineage, who had a high social status and was wealthy himself. Where was he? He was with the former slaves. He was with fugitives. Bilal, he was a former slave from Abyssinia. Suhaib al-Rumi was a man who was raised in Rome, who was a fugitive, escaped bondage, and traveled to Mecca. And Ammar ibn Yasir was the son of his mother who was a freed slave and his father who was an immigrant. This is who the Prophet ﷺ was surrounding himself with. He had every ability to surround himself with his tribemen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, his nephew, with Abu Bakr, his best companion. These were noblemen. These were people of very high social status in the time when they were in Mecca and Quraysh. But he was with people who were considered to have a low status in society. So when these noblemen, they came, they looked at the Prophet ﷺ and they asked him, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, are you happy with these people? Are these the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed? Speaking very arrogantly, talking down to them. They told him, listen, you get rid of them, and perhaps we'll follow you. You get rid of these lowlifes, and then maybe perhaps we'll follow you. Now, I want you to think for a second from a humanistic standpoint. We're talking about the Prophet ﷺ. His goal was to spread Islam to the entire ummah. We can imagine that maybe it crossed his mind, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if I just leave them for a little bit, I'll come back to them. But then I'll have the noblemen of Quraysh, who through them Islam will be my platform and Islam will spread forward. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent down a verse at this very time. وَلَا تَطْرِدِ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, don't turn away those who يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ. They pray, they call upon their Lord. بِالْغَدَاةِ, in the morning and in the evening. يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. They call upon their Lord seeking His face, seeking His power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent down a verse defending the disenfranchised, defending the people who were considered to be weak at the time. So now, us, in a very similar social standing, we're not the majority here in America. Our community is very diverse. People that hail from Muslim families and very prestigious backgrounds. What do we do when we see people coming in the masjid? What do we do when we see people who we naturally assume or unnaturally, due to stereotypes, assume that they're of low social status? What do we do when we see that foreign exchange student come from overseas into the masjid we don't know? What do we do when we see the sister who might not be dressed how we'd like her to be dressed? Or the brother who looks disheveled who just popped up out of nowhere? These are questions we have to be asking ourselves. How do we treat our brothers and sisters wearing the masjid? Do we make them feel comfortable when they come in? Or do we stick with our clansmen, with our tribes, the people that look like us, that speak very similar languages, who are both married, who our kids can play with? Or do we break down these social walls that we have built up and we truly get to know one another as a family? Because that's really what a community is. Essentially, it's nothing but a family. It's a group of people who have gotten together of different backgrounds for a similar purpose, and our purpose is nothing other than to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to gain His pleasure. Another circumstance, another situation. They're in the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's presence, the companions are with him, and a strange man comes walking in, a Bedouin. Now the Bedouins, they're usually very frank and a little bit coarse at times. So a Bedouin walks in and urinates in the corner of the masjid. We can't even imagine something like that happening here at the ISPCC. But let's imagine a man comes in intoxicated. Let's imagine a sister comes in, her clothes are torn apart. She might not be dressed properly, or she's whatever the situation may be. A man came into the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his presence, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and urinated in the corner. So obviously, naturally, the companions, out of their love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the fact that this is their masjid they built with their own hands, were upset about this. So naturally, they began to chastise this man. They began to stand up. In the narration, some narrations say they stood up to do something. Some narrations say that he began to rebuke him and to talk bad about him. The Prophet ﷺ, what did he do in this situation? He didn't stop the companions in a way that would cause more harm to this man, and he didn't fuel the fire by making the scene bigger. He merely told them, stop. When he's done, pour some water on it, and that's it. He mitigated two problems right here. He didn't stop the man in mid-urine. He didn't make the companions feel they were doing something wrong, because they were only following their natural love of the Prophet ﷺ and what's natural as a human being to defend their house of worship. But by mitigating these two problems, he made the man feel comfortable, who was a Bedouin. I repeat, was a Bedouin. He wasn't from the city. He was from the burbs, from the outskirts. And by doing this, after the man finished praying, he came back to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon me and you and no one else. And the Prophet ﷺ now, after hearing this, he said to what is translated to mean, you have restricted the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why are you constricting the mercy? But the moral of the story is that the Prophet ﷺ, in his awesome manners in dealing with this situation, a man who wasn't from the community, who did something very vile, didn't make the companions feel estranged, and he didn't make this man feel like he was an alien. So much so that after he finished praying, he prayed for the Prophet ﷺ. Is this how we're acting here in the masjid? Is this how we're making people feel? Because I have grown to love this masjid very, very much. Wallahi, I feel as if it's my own. But I see after salah, the brothers from one country, they give salams to their people. Even this week, mashallah, we've had the smile campaign where everyone's giving smiles to one another. And it's beautiful. Brothers come to me, I see them, they're giving smiles. But when you look deeper, who are we really giving smiles to? When we go to the cafe, who are we sitting with? Are we sitting amongst the people that look like us, that speak the same language, from the same background? Or are we sitting with the random brother who's by himself? Or the sister who's eating alone, who we've never seen before? These are things we have to be considerate of. And mind you, this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ was a worst case scenario. Imagine on a regular day when someone came in. Not to mention the very famous hadith of Jibril, who Sheikh Yasser, may Allah have mercy on him, always mentions. When the Bedouin man came in who we know from the famous hadith, who ended up being Jibril, who no one knew, but the Prophet ﷺ still dealt with him in a very soft way. So, I want to leave this here with you. Again, I'm new here. I'm not here to rebuke anyone. I'm not here to say that anyone's doing anything wrong, because in actuality, it's only natural that we stick with our people. But I want to ask you, are we truly following the way of the Prophet ﷺ? Are we truly trying to embody his sunnah? وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين واستغفروه وأتوب إليه. إن الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. As I mentioned in the first khutbah, here in America we're in a very unique social circumstance. That in a masjid, a cornerstone masjid like ours here at the IFCC, in a college town like ours, we have people from every corner of the earth coming through. And we have many different people who I no doubt are disenfranchised in our community. But one specific demographic that I'd like to focus on are those people who have newly embraced Islam. What are we doing when a brother or sister embraces Islam? Now, many of us hail from Muslim families where a long tradition of Islam has been in our blood. But these people who accept Islam, we have no idea the sacrifice that they go through. Many times estranged by their families, abandoned by friends, simply because they say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And to make things harder than that, they have to start a completely new way of life. The way they enter the house, the way they use the bathroom. And obviously it's a gradual process, but it is a process. It's not easy. What are we doing for them? And I'm not talking institutionally, because wallahi, I know I've spoken with ISPCC, the administration. Everyone's trying to do as best they can. We have classes. I'm not talking about institutionally, because that's not what really makes the community. What makes the community is the community. After the brother takes his shahada, he embraces Islam, we all say, Allahu Akbar, we accept and we give him hugs and ma'as-salama, as they say overseas. See you later. What are we doing for him? How many people take that brother's or that sister's number? How many of us invite them over our houses? Wallahi, I asked some brothers and it almost made me tear up. What did you do for Eid? How was your Eid? It was okay. What do you mean? I prayed and I went home. Just think about that. On our holy day, all they could do was pray and go home. Last year, I had the opportunity to experience this. My wife visited someone else who had no Muslim family. She took the kids. I gave the khutbah in my local masjid, prayed the salah, went home, and was depressed. Because for the first time in my life, I was forced to feel what many different brothers and sisters in our community have to go through on a normal basis. What are we doing for them? We have to change this. It is not an option for us, because they are a part of our community just like everyone else is. So in conclusion, I implore every single brother and sister in this community to reanalyze what we think or how we truly value a community. To reanalyze not just what the building means, not what an institution means, but what the community means to us. The individuals, the people who make up the community. The brother or sister who just came home from prison, the brother or sister who comes from overseas, the brother or sister who accepts Islam, whoever it may be. Alhamdulillah, you all embrace me with warm hearts. But I'm an Imam. I come with a position. Do we extend the same love and warmth to everyone that comes to the community. Because this is how we win the hearts over. This is how we truly follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is how that we can, insha'Allah, be excellent people and embody the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is something we have to really sincerely think about. And in conclusion, I just want to close with something that Abdul-Malik Shabazz, formerly known as Malcolm X, he said, and I'm going to read it just to make sure that I say his words correctly. He said, don't be in a hurry to condemn because he doesn't know what you do, or he may not think as fast. There was a time when you didn't know what you know today. We all started somewhere. Whether it was us who hail from Muslim families, as children not knowing anything, and the uncles and the aunties, they took us in with warm hearts, mentored us, and allowed us to be where we are today. Or it's the brothers and sisters who accepted Islam 10, 15, 20 years ago. Or the brothers and sisters who re-embraced Islam again. And it's something second nature to go to the masjid, to say Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam, to say Arabic words that people just may not understand. But we have to rethink how would we feel if we were in their shoes. Sometimes rechanging our lingo, translating words we may not usually translate. Because the goal is to make everyone in the community feel comfortable. So with this I close, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our community a beacon of light and a true example of how the Prophet ﷺ was in his community. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts to those people who are either not from our community or are new, and those people who are here, to make everyone feel warm in this community. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in empathy for our brothers and sisters. Not just sympathy, but empathy, true empathy for our brothers and sisters. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humble ourselves, to humble us with everyone in the community. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in taqwa, in fear of Him, and God consciousness of Him. When we're in the masjid, when we're at homes, when we're on the streets, so that we truly, not just as an institution, but as people, Americans, as Muslim Americans in this country, can truly be shuhada'u ala nas, can truly be an exemplary or an example for the people. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين واستغفروه وأتوب إليه وأقيم الصلاة.